Welcome to the Fraud and Tell series, a show where we uncover regional fraud trends, fraud schemes, and emerging threats. I'm your host, Maxim Baltakov, Head of Fraud and Financial Crime Solutions at Group IB covering Meta region. And today our guest is Lazar Noir, an expert in cybersecurity and fraud prevention. Lazar, thank you so much for coming. And to kick things off, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how did you end up in the fraud prevention industry?
Thank you, Max, and very happy to be with you here today. So my name is Lazar Noir, and I am today leading the solution team at Group IB for the Meta region. So basically, we are looking after fraud topics, basically, for our clients from different industry in the region here, covering Middle East, GCC, Turkey, and Africa. My journey started 15 years ago, basically in Europe, right, where I graduated from a French university, computer science university. And I started my first role basically in the industry in a company called Accenture, service company. And my first role was software developer, right? So I started coding basically applications, but quickly I realized that I wanted to be behind the why of this equation, right? And to understand basically what was the purpose of what I was coding, right? And how I can basically contribute to the solutioning of that. So I started shifting into more like design and solutioning roles within Accenture itself. And I got the opportunity to work in a very, very important industries like aviation, like automotive. And it was really a very rich experience, right, in terms of knowledge, technologies, and so on. And then life took me across the ocean to North America, Canada, and I worked again in the service industry for CGI. And then, so during that experience, I started dealing with integration and, architectural topics. And I started to realize how important and how technology and business are tied together as well, right? In order to scale fast, you need also the technology to do that, basically. So after the CGI experience, I got my first role in the banking industry with National Bank of Canada, where I was in the integration team, working with a lot of architects, basically doing the transformation of the bank from legacy and traditional architecture into modern microservice and cloud-based technology. And it was really a very, very interesting experience in terms of knowledge, in terms of, the business value of what we've been doing once again, right? So that was really a good learning time for me. Then I shifted again, across the ocean again, or let's say across the deserts, right? And now I'm sitting with you here in UAE, in Dubai. And basically, since that time, I'm working on the other side now. I'm working with the vendor side, right? The vendor who propose solutions, right, to different industries. So within that journey, I started first with payment and banking technologies, very innovative sector as well, especially when it comes to Middle East. We are in the middle of transformation here. Africa as well, very fast and booming region in terms of new technologies and next generation of banking. And basically, I learned a lot within that space of, payment technologies, neobanks, digital banks, and so on. So that's, again, another very insightful and rich industry. But I quickly realized also that although you can offer very modern technologies in terms of digital banking, very convenient, very seamless, one thing is missing, which is the security part, right? Because technology needs to be followed also with the right mechanism and protection when it comes to combating fraud, right? So, and this is where basically I am since years now, working on that fraud and financial crime, right? Technologies, which today I feel is the right place for me, especially there is a massive need in that in all continents, and especially our region here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Lazar, for the overview and very interesting background story. It seems like you have an experience in many different industries that are very relevant, for the fraud prevention topic. And talking about the fraud prevention industry, right, as you correctly said, it is very fast-paced, but also, very high-pressure environment from all the responsibility that you have while designing the solution, and constant, battle against the threat actors and fraudsters that are keep innovating and so on. What qualities do you need to have to build a successful career in the fraud prevention industry? What traits someone like you needs to have?
That's a very good question, Max. I would say the first quality is to be aware of what we're doing and what's the purpose of what we're doing, right? What we're doing, to my sense, is a noble mission of protecting others, right? We all have family, friends, someone, right, that we know that got scammed, defrauded, they lost money, right? And when you think every day that what you do can help these people is basically to have more protection, for me, that's the number one motivation, right? And when you have this motivation, it can only help you to be more successful in our industry. Number two, I would say also is passion for technologies, because, it's a very fast-paced industry where things are changing and moving every day, as any other technology industry or technological industry. So if you have that passion for technologies, you are in the right place as well when you work in the fraud industry. The last one that is also important for me is perseverance, right, and curiosity, right? Because again, fraud is evolving every day, right? So when you are a fraud practitioner, you need also to be able to do your own research. There is no school that teaches you fraud, right? So it's all based on research, curiosity, asking colleagues, reading reports, and so on, just to keep always up to date with what's happening, and why not having a step further, right?
I agree. I totally agree with you. I think noble mission and constant innovation in the industry is something that keeps me going on a daily basis as well. But you also need to know that it's not only on the defense side, right, that is constantly innovating. It's also threat actors, fraud communities, scammers that are coming up with new ways to, attack their victims, to launch social engineering attacks and so on. And talking about the schemes, right, especially here in the Middle East, right, the region that seems to be, quite I would say underreported in the sense of regional fraud schemes. We keep hearing about various trends coming from Southeast Asia, from Europe, North America, and so on. But maybe you can share something with us about the regional fraud schemes that are taking place right now as we speak.
Well, that's the thing, Max. So basically, when we think about fraud, right, a lot of it feels it's happening somewhere else, right? Huge scam campaign in Europe, AI, like fraud in Asia, and so on. But in reality, Middle East has its own fraud trends, right? And it's even more dangerous because it feels familiar, like it sounds local, right? And we are talking about groups speaking the same language, having the same cultural references. And one of the cases that I can walk you through today is something that happened recently, right? And to my sense, it was one of the most effective and underreported fraud scheme, right? Something that was spreading quietly, but with serious impact on people's life, right? And you wouldn't expect where it started. Actually, it was not in a banking application or any shady SMS phishing link or anything. It started at a very trustworthy government application to protect consumers, right? So basically, you have had a bad experience transacting somewhere on e-commerce, right? The government created that portal basically for consumers to report that bad experience, hoping to have a refund, let's say, right? So this is what you would naturally do if you have that bad experience. You're gonna register your case, you would register in that portal, you would report the details of your bad experience. When you're done, you receive an email confirmation and even a case number, right? Everything so far is good. Few days later, you receive a call from someone extremely polite, very professional, referencing very precisely that case that you have filled, right? And even throwing a badge number to sound more official, right? And they have a good news for you, basically. Your case has been studied, right? And you are eligible for a refund. So far, so good. Very happy scenario, right? Now, you need to execute few steps, right, for the fraudsters to get basically that refund being processed. So, and it starts as following, right? First of all, they will ask you to download that same government application on your mobile. Second step, they will ask you to download also a remote access tool like TeamViewer, AnyDesk, so they can guide you actually through the process of refund, right? So at that moment, when you downloaded these two applications, they have control basically on your screen. You see what you see, or what they see what you see, basically. And the next step would be to upload your credit card in that government application. So remember, they are watching you, right? So the moment you upload that card, they have seen the details of the card. Now, a few seconds later, you receive an SMS OTP, which is basically a 3D secure. Someone is transacting online. So while they keep you calm and reassured, right, they started draining your card, right, and draining your funds. So yeah, as you can see, there is 3 ingredients of trust, data, and remote control that makes it extremely effective and extremely dangerous.
I see. You mentioned the trust element. I completely agree with you. And what I noticed in many previous fraud schemes that I studied, a big portion of them that is successful has a very strong trust abuse technique, right? Do you think the government portal image was chosen by the fraudsters because of the trust associated with it?
Well, naturally, when we think about public portals, especially to protect consumers, we naturally would think that this is something safe, right? And because also fraudsters, they manage to reference precisely, right, that case that they have filled with even a case number. That was another element to build trust. So definitely, when fraudsters are exploiting these public services and adding some information on top of that, it definitely builds trust. And this is the biggest trick from my perspective.
I see. Very interesting. But I'm curious to know, how did the fraudsters manage to target those victims in the first place, right? Because it seems like a very targeted attack. You need to understand the people who fill the complaint. You need to know what their pain points are. How did they manage to get that information?
That's a very good question. Basically, as any fraud scheme, we need to understand the modus operandi and the tactics, right? So after we did our investigation, basically we found that these fraudsters, right, they got these informations from these cases, right, that been filled in the government application via info stealer malwares. And these are simply like softwares, right, that can infect your browser or your mobile and start sharing information with the fraudsters. Now, once fraudsters, they got these informations, basically your credentials, files maybe from a device, personal information, what they would do basically, it could be either the same group starting a social engineering campaign from this information, or that same group who collected the information can sell it in dark forums and dark web. So another group basically can take over, right, and start the social engineering campaign.
Well, it seems like a very complex and global network of cyber criminals, right? Something that we are dealing with on a daily basis. And honestly, it's quite impressive. With the scale of their operations, what are they doing, behind these fraud schemes and so on. Talking about the industry response, right? How do professionals working in the fraud prevention industry tackle such massive challenge that is driven by that global syndicate of cyber criminals? What is their modern approach to this threat?
Well, when you mention global syndicate, this is something very important that I would start with, right? So today we are talking about fraud as a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are facing very well-organized groups distributed across the globe, connecting basically from any place in the world, right? Using techs, right, to hide their location, to spoof their devices, to evade basically any control that you would have as a bank or as a government portal. And that's why the first solution that I would suggest for a financial institution is to have a technology that gives you visibility on these techniques and tactics that are used by fraudsters, right? And it's today it's very simple to have that. It's just software that you can embed into your application, right? And you collect some information, nothing personal, only hardware, software information. And basically you can start watching basically the activity that is happening on your user sessions. And then it's very easy to distinguish between a legitimate session and a malicious session, right? So we can easily collect all this telemetry and basically create signals that indicates the presence of these, let's say, compromised sessions, remote control, social engineering, and so on. So for bank, definitely, we need to have such protections. Now, for government portals, it's very important to protect also these public services because you can see it can be the backdoor basically for fraud. So it could start just as a data theft, right? But then it's also used to build trust, right? So it's not only about protecting data, it's because it's used in the scheme itself. These fraudsters manage to build trust because they manage to connect to the government portal, right? So it's same technology can be applied to government portals to protect basically against account takeover, synthetic account creation, social engineering, and so on. So the same technology, I would recommend it to governments as well.
I see. So it seems like an industry is well protected, or at least have means or technology to tackle such threats. That's reassuring. But for regular ordinary population, do you have a certain advice because they don't have an access to these technologies? They do not have knowledge and experience that us have in the fraud prevention industry. What advice do you have for this regular population?
First of all, I would say never ever share any information with anyone, right? Like official institutions, official entities will never ask you to download an application or to share your screen or to share your card details. So as soon as you face this situation, just stop that call and contact your bank basically or your institution to inform them about the situation.
Lazar, thank you so much. I think that's a very interesting fraud scheme, and thank you for highlighting and providing awareness on this very important topic. But talking about the global trends in general, right? So you did a very good overview on what is happening in the Middle East. But as you know, there is a lot of advancement lately in the domain of AI. We're talking about AI agents, LLMs, other technologies emerging in a very fast pace. But also new threats coming as well, right? And from the global perspective, do you see any particular, risk associated with this new technology? Any schemes, any fraudulent activity, or group of fraudsters adopting this latest tech to target the victims?
Well, when it comes to global trends, that's also something very important to consider because at Group IB, we have experts localized everywhere, across all continents, basically. And what we know is that when a particular scheme starts in a region, the next step is that this scheme will spread potentially in another region. So it's very important for us also to study what's happening in other continents in order to be prepared to fight against that scheme in our region. And one of the cases that I came across recently happened in South Asia. So our analysts found basically in a very famous digital bank in South Asia, over 3 months, more than 1,000 deepfake accounts managed to circumvent the KYC system of this bank. So the KYC system is that process asking basically users to take some selfies, to upload an ID document, to upload a proof of residency in order to pass that biometric verification or identity verification. And this is the system that got circumvented. Now, in terms of the modus operandi that was used, it was very unique and very scary, to be honest. So we are not facing that traditional fake ID or fake selfie, right? We are talking about an AI-powered synthetic identities, one that is able to smile, to blink, just as you as a human would do, right? And this makes it very unique and very dangerous. Now, if I wanted to break it down in more details, just to show you the complexity of this scheme, when it comes to the ID generation, right, we found out that they used an open technology, AI technology on the web, right, that allow you to create the perfect synthetic ID document for just $15. And this same technology made the headline recently for being able to pass a major KYC system for a crypto exchange application, right, just for $15. Now, when it comes to liveness check and selfies, basically they took, or they are able to take an image, right, animate it using deepfake, right, or a video and animate it using deepfake, and basically it's a full mimicry of a human, like face expressions and even micro emotions that they can inject there. Now, once this video is ready, what they can do basically is to inject these videos into virtual cameras that are feeding the KYC system in real time. So you can see how complex is this scheme. It involves very high techs, right, to perform it. And basically, when you see this happening in South Asia, you can expect this to happen anytime in other regions.
I see. It's what you're describing is actually quite scary.
It's scary.
But in your opinion, is traditional banking sector equipped to fight these advanced threats? Are they, able to protect themselves against such, AI-driven cyber fraud attacks?
Well, today banks, they have some technology, right, to first of all to collect these biometrics, right? So as I said, there are a few steps: ID, selfie, proof of residency. And unfortunately, for every of this step, as I explained, there is an evasion from the fraudsters. So when it comes to ID uploading, again, AI-generated ID. When it comes to selfie, deepfake. When it comes to proof of residency, open libraries available on internet to create any utility bill or something. So the answer is there is some protection, but it's not enough, right? Maybe you would ask me the next question, what's the solution, right? Basically, there is a good news behind this. So although these deepfakes are not always detected by KYC system, right? But you can also complement what exists in the banks with behavioral checks, right? So a technology like fraud protection from Group IB basically can assess how much these sessions during the KYC process are safe or not. So typically what I would assess here is the presence of an emulator, right? Mm-hmm. Because all this KYC system or KYC fake process, right, was done via emulators and automation. So detecting automation and emulators, this is something very easily that we can perform very easily, right? So by combining technologies of KYC, improving also KYC to be able to also detect some deepfakes, and combining this with emulator detection, scanning of the device, checking the location, checking other fraudsters' TTPs, basically we can offer a good protection against this kind of scheme. Now, what I highlighted now is what we call the holistic approach, right? Mm-hmm. Which involves also collaboration. So different departments in a bank or in another institution need also to talk to each other, as the systems would do as well. So fraud protection, for example, can integrate into a KYC system or another system to perform a risk-based approach, because user experience also is important in this equation. We don't want to create processes that are too tough in terms of security, right? So this kind of balance is only possible when you make all these components talking to each other in a collaborative way.
I totally agree with you, Lazar, and I think that having a visibility on what is going on the customer device when he's going through such sensitive journey like new account opening, the KYC process, or any other risky journey is crucial to spotting and detecting any kind of fraud activity early on. But you mentioned that this particular fraud case is targeting a digital bank in Southeast Asia. Very frequently, I hear this common misconception that it is only the banking industry that is being targeted by the fraudsters, by scammers with those, sophisticated AI-driven attacks or, just scam campaigns in general, and that other verticals such as e-commerce or real estate or other verticals, they are not, targeted by these fraudsters. Is it really the case?
So, yeah, indeed, the general perception is that only financial sector is being targeted. But the reality, every business that is operating online can be a potential target for fraudsters, and for various reasons. When we talk about government, is basically, as we described before, to, for example, steal data, right? Data theft, building trust. When it comes to e-commerce, it's all these scenarios of card not present. When it comes to telcos, for example, there is a very sensitive journey of SIM swap or hijacking the SIM of that victim. And in our region, a lot of telcos started offering that journey of eSIM or virtual SIM. So it's very important to protect. So any sector operating online needs some sort of protection and is targeted, basically. The other example that I wanted to walk you through today is not a very common one in the general perception, but it's happening. It's in the real estate sector. And believe me, the damages are very important. So it's basically fraudsters targeting people looking for a property by, first of all, impersonating, let's say, a landlord, right? Creating a fake listing, communicating with the victims, taking money, basically, and disappearing, right? And the median loss, when we made the calculation, was at least $3,000 per individual per year. So in some way, the damages are even more important than the financial sector, right? So when we accumulate all of this, we are talking about millions of losses.
I see. Is it something that's happening here in the Middle East? And if so, can you walk us through the complexity behind that case? What TTPs of the fraudsters in such particular scenario would be?
Absolutely. It's happening in the Middle East since many countries in our region started to offer all these government services for real estate. As I said, if you are looking for a property, basically all this tenancy contract and all this operation happen online, right? And on the details of the modus operandi, basically, the target audience, first of all, that's a very important element to consider. So these fraudsters, they are targeting primarily expats, newcomers, people who are not familiar with the local practices. They fall easier, basically, into these schemes. Secondly, they will take an existing listing, right? They will create a fake copy and they will publish it in these listing websites online, right? Then basically contacts and communication starts between the victim and the fraudsters. And it happens generally over WhatsApp, which is a very secure communication channel for fraudsters. Then basically, again, to build trust and make it sound more legitimate, they will use that government portal for real estate to create that fake tenancy contract. And they can send it immediately to the victim for signing. And then the last step is to ask for money. So to secure that property, you need to transfer some funds to the fraudsters. Mm-hmm. So basically, that's the end of the process. And basically, fraudsters simply vanish. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's how it goes.
I see. And usually, I think I saw some of these cases, and in many of them, there is an element of urgency that is involved, right? Because this fake listings that the fraudsters, publish is usually, definitely below the market, and they're saying, I have another person contacted me on the same listing. So I think it's also an important element in the scheme.
Absolutely. I think the emergency is a very important element. I will say this also for general awareness. Mm-hmm. Whenever someone is putting pressure on you to quickly pay for something, that's generally a bad sign. Mm-hmm. But just to come back to your question about complexity as well, the reason it's complex is because it involves manipulation, mm-hmm. right? Building trust, etc. But also there are multiple applications that are involved in this process. Remember, real estate listing application, mm-hmm. real estate government application to basically sign the tenancy contract, banking applications. So we have here some silos where fraud is happening, and this is what makes it even more complex.
Mm-hmm. I see. So in such case, right, how does real estate industry or that portal where you sign a tenancy contract protect itself against such complicated and multi-domain attack coming from the fraudsters? What would be an approach or a suggestion from you?
There are solutions, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to that government portal, right? As the example we have mentioned before about the other government portal, mm-hmm. what they need is a technology also to give them visibility on malicious activity going on. Mm-hmm. So again, mentioning the example of fraud protection, basically you can capture all these sessions and create a risk score associated with every session. So this risk score will tell you basically how much you can trust this is a legitimate session, or this is an account takeover, or this is a fake account creation. Mm-hmm. And by doing so, basically you can take down most of the fraud, and you can protect the access and the creation of accounts within these government portals. Mm-hmm. So technology exists, it's just ready basically to be implemented.
I agree. And in this fraud scheme that you mentioned, there were multiple bodies involved, right? Multiple portals, multiple websites. And what I'm seeing in the industry, even in the financial sector, is that the fraudsters, they take advantage of this data fragmentation, lack of information sharing. And because of that, they are able to distribute their infrastructure among multiple entities, if you're talking about mule accounts in the financial sector, or if they're conducting this large fraud scheme that involves multiple websites, multiple digital channels, and so on. And does the industry have an answer for this? Because it seems like a common problem.
Indeed, this is the main challenge, Max, because of the fragmentation of data, right, and silos, entities not talking to each other, not collaborating with them. Fraudsters are taking advantage of that, right? So luckily, we invested heavily into finding a solution for this problem. And we came up with a solution, basically, that can allow all these institutions to share insights about fraud in a confidential fashion. And the reason I'm saying confidential is because this is an industry, and you can apply this to, as you said, banking, e-commerce, government. When it comes to sharing information, this is highly regulated, right? Mm-hmm. So you cannot just bring a technology to share information. There is an entire framework of confidentiality that you need to build as well, right? And the solution that we have built allows basically that, luckily, right? So once institutions from different sectors are connected basically to this centralized technology, they will be able to, first of all, report fraud in real time, and also to score a transaction based on the history of these financial insights before to make a decision about the transaction. So typically, for a bank, for example, I would ask this platform if this transfer is safe before I execute it. And basically, I will share an IBAN in that case, or a phone number, right? If that phone number or IBAN was reported by another institution in the past, basically I will get these signals to be careful, and then I can stop this transaction in real time. And this can apply to any domain, right? Any industry. We are talking about telcos that can contribute there, right? We are talking about law enforcement that can contribute there. We are talking about financial sector, fintechs, government, PSPs. Anyone can basically contribute. But because this is highly sensitive and highly confidential, a central entity basically in the country needs to operate that solution. We are talking here about ministries, government, central banks, right? So the solution exists. It just needs to be implemented in order to basically close all these blind spots that we have today in the industry.
I see. You're talking about the industry response, right? Something that we've been working on for a very long time. But for the regular consumers and users of such, real estate portals or government portals, do you have any advice for them for this particular scheme?
Indeed, this is again a general awareness, right? Never basically transact on something that you don't know. Right. For example, if we talk about real estate, don't send money if you haven't visited the property, right? Don't necessarily trust a platform just because it's government, right? Do your due diligence. Meet the people face to face. We know that digital is basically meant to remove the physical interaction, but still, take some precautions before to send money to someone you have never seen, because scams are happening a lot, and we see this everywhere, either using a national authentication system, using a national system to buy and sell insurances, or to buy a car or sell a car. We are seeing these schemes basically everywhere, right? So awareness is important about what's happening, and I think every institution needs to invest also in the awareness of users. Governments need to invest in the awareness of end users and citizens, and every institution on top of that awareness need to implement technologies basically to have visibility on the adversaries and tactics and techniques and procedures that are used by fraudsters.
And another question I wanted to ask you, Lazar, what you have previously mentioned is that the financial sector, traditional banks, fintechs, they're heavily investing in the area of fraud prevention, right? They're collaborating with companies like Group IB or other vendors to tackle this complex problem of digital fraud. But as we previously discussed, right, other sectors, right, such as e-commerce or real estate, they're in many cases very hesitant to adopt new technologies, to invest in the fraud prevention, and they're not seeing that as part of their problem. So why do you think that is happening? What is the main reason behind it?
Well, first of all, I think that there is a lack of awareness about what is online fraud, right? A lot of companies, they think they are protected just because they have a KYC system or because they have some authentication system. But the reality, fraudsters, they find this kind of vulnerabilities that exist in traditional methods, right? And what is needed is an online technology that can basically spot signs of any malicious activity, right, as we know. Now, the other sectors, the main reason from what I see in the field is because there is no direct financial impact on them, right? Not like a bank. When there is fraud in a bank, basically liability goes on the bank. When it comes to other sectors like government and others, there is no financial impact. So it's just user is not lucky, goodbye, right? So, but the reality also is we see, because we collaborate with banks, we see all these complaints coming from end users. And always when you read these complaints, in the description, you can see that fraud started from that application from another industry. Either it's an application, national application for real estate, national application to sell cars, etc., national application to buy an insurance, and so on, and public portals and so on. So somehow they are used like the back door and the enabler of fraud. And the responsibility of government and other industries is also to provide protections to these end users. Now, because there is no financial impact and there is no regulation, right, we are not seeing these sectors moving as fast as banks. And this is why we, in our daily interaction with these other industry actors, we are also promoting these awareness about online fraud and the importance of it, right? But I think it's a deeper topic that needs to happen also with ministries and regulators, right? Since they are the entities who can basically recommend the right measures to be implemented. And we have experts, consultants that can basically help these ministries to shape the next generation of fraud framework, basically for government and any other entity. So this is basically my dream.
Yeah, I think you're completely correct. I totally agree with you, because this complex challenge of digital fraud, in my opinion, it is everyone's problem, right? If you're operating online, regardless of the vertical, you are part of this overall effort to stop this. And again, I totally agree with you that it is role of the government, right, or some kind of a regulatory body to take lead, right, on this particular topic and coordinate with multiple industries, multiple verticals to tackle it.
That's perfect, exactly. So not every country is moving in the same speed. To be completely fair, like what we see in the region, some countries are also making a lot of efforts. So we are seeing this coming, right, from different segment of the industry, like real estate. We are seeing also Minister of Commerce doing things like this in that perspective of fraud. So I'm not completely pessimistic. I think things are moving in the right way, right direction, and we will continue to support these entities, government, central banks, and banks, and even individual to combat fraud.
I see. I think it's been a very insightful and very interesting conversation. Lazar, thank you so much for sharing all of the stories, regional fraud schemes, and providing awareness. I think it's very important. And again, thank you for the participation.
Thank you, Max, for the opportunity to share this information, and looking forward to the next episodes.
It was Fraud and Tell series podcast. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.